Everybody, welcome to this week's edition of the Atheist Experience. I'm your host, Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week, Don Baker. How you doing?
Good to be here. I'm doing fine.
That was Depeche Mode's Lie to Me, for those of you who couldn't necessarily read the titles. We're live. It's December 2nd, 2007. We'd like to welcome everybody to the show. This is a live public access television program. We'll have a telephone number up shortly so viewers can call in. It gives us, the atheists in the Austin area, the opportunity to speak to the public, address misconceptions about atheism, discuss religious issues, political issues, the separation of church and state. And also provides kind of an outreach service to individuals in the Austin area to let them know you're not alone, and there's a number of events you can participate, some like-minded individuals who would enjoy your company. And to those people around the world now watching, welcome. The audio portion of this program is available from our website as a podcast and download. The video is available on Google Video. In addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast called The Nonprofits. That's Prophets. And you can go to nonprofitsradio.com for more information about that program. It's a live podcast every other Saturday from 2 to 3:30. We were live yesterday. We'll be live again on the 15th. And that will be the final show for the 2007, which is our 6th season of the Nonprofits. We managed to crank out 25, or we will have managed to crank out 25 episodes this year. And the Nonprofits will be back live January 5th, I believe is the date. So it's the very first
Yeah, you guys have done a good job getting those episodes out.
Very first Saturday in January. We'll try and have a special guest call in that week, but we'll see more about it then. As I mentioned, the ACA sponsors this. The Atheist Community of Austin is a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. We have weekly meetings every Sunday at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road, except for the first Sunday of the month when we host a lecture series, which was today, actually. The lecture series is at the Austin History Center, located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. Today's lecture, we showed the video, or the movie, The God Who Wasn't There by Brian Fleming. We have lectures lined up for January and February and March, evidently. There's more information about those events on the ACA's website, www.atheist-community.org. If you're not a member of the ACA and you're interested in membership, there's information on the website about that. If you are a member, please visit the website. There's announcements there about our winter solstice party. You'll need to RSVP if you're coming. There are also other announcements up there pertaining to our regular blood drive and the other events we do. In addition to the lectures and the media outreach programs, we also have a happy hour every Thursday at the Dog and Duck Pub, located at the corner of 17th and Guadalupe. That begins around 7 o'clock. And after this program is over, those of us involved in the show get together and go to the IHOP on Cesar Chavez next to I-35. This show's on until 4:30. And we'll be at the IHOP from 5 to about 7. Back in the Glassed-In room, all of our events are open to the public. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person who'd like to join us is welcome to. You don't have to be an atheist to attend. You don't have to be a member to attend. But if you're coming down to preach, proselytize, or provoke, please don't. We'd like to enjoy our time off, and this is the opportunity for you to do so. We'll have the number up for you later. Also, if you don't get through on the phones today, or if you don't want to, there are two other things you can do, or three probably actually. There's a frequently asked questions section on our website that you can go to, which answers a lot of the common questions we receive about who atheists are, what we believe, what we don't believe, and why. You can also email tv@atheist-community.org. That goes to myself, the co-hosts, a lot of people behind the scenes. We can't promise to respond to all of them, but we do read all of them. If you have feedback, questions, criticisms, concerns, we'll certainly address those. One of the concerns was we need to make the announcement shorter, so I'm doing that. We're at the 4.5-minute mark, and I'm almost done. You can also email with any discussion points that you didn't want to bring up on the air. I engage in a lot of conversations with listeners from all around the world who have either agree or disagree with points that were made on the show and want to discuss it further. I'm happy to do that. I enjoy it, but I can't carry on lengthy conversations with everyone forever. I wish I could, but I gotta work and eat and sleep and play some video games or something and take a break from this on occasion. So welcome to the program. This program will be available on Google Video soon. We appreciate all those people from around the world who've been emailing us. I can't even begin to list all the places we've been getting email from, but it's greatly appreciated. In the past week, we had a couple people write in to thank us for the work that we've done on the show. We'd like to thank you for not only appreciating what we do here, but helping us improve it with your suggestions on things. A number of times we make mistakes during having conversations.
Oh yeah, we appreciate corrections. We'd like to learn and potentially correct things on the air, and we appreciate people sending us articles. Often it's the case that we know about them, but sometimes not. And those rare gems that people come across, we'd really appreciate.
Definitely. So that's it for the announcements, unless I've missed something that you can think of.
No, I think you did good.
Cool. So we'll actually go on and start, we'll put the number up for you in about 15, 20 minutes probably.
Yeah.
And give Donna a chance to talk.
A chance to
What are we talking about today?
Hypocrisy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right.
So, I would define hypocrisy as claiming or advocating one thing while doing another, and I would say this shows a lack of sincerity, a lack of integrity, and possibly even a hidden agenda. Right? If you're claiming one thing and doing another, and if you're doing something else, it's because actions speak very loudly. They tell you about the real motivations of the person or the real beliefs or whatever. So, for example, if someone claims to want to lose weight, for example, but then doesn't change their behavior, then they don't really want to lose weight. They have other priorities or other things that are more important, or they may have a health issue or whatever. So even, like going into New Year's, we have a lot of New Year's resolutions, and it's a pretty common thing that people don't hold on to their New Year's resolutions because really they just think they want to do these things, and in reality their priorities are elsewhere, right? So you really have to sort of change your priorities and such. So in my mind, hypocrisy means that there's a lie going on. It's either self-deception of the person who is stating something, or it's active deception where they know something is bad, and when they're just promulgating a lie.
I think it's often described as either eyes open or eyes closed. When you talk about, for example, like the various people who claim psychic abilities and stuff, they fall into two categories. Anybody who's claiming something supernatural. There are those who are eyes open, who are exploiting other people's beliefs in something, and they're intentionally deceiving. And then there are those who are eyes closed, who think that, like dowsers, a lot of dowsers legitimately think that if they walk around with their sticks or their bent
right.
coat hangers, that it works. They don't know why, but they sincerely believe it. I don't think that many of them are eyes open and trying to deceive.
Right.
They're still wrong.
And for someone on the outside, it really doesn't matter, right? Because it's important to sort of recognize that there's a lie, and whether or not the person is doing it intentionally or unintentionally is a secondary issue, right? The fact is that you want to be aware of the lie and be aware of the problem and not be taken in necessarily. So, and unfortunately, and deception is immoral. I should make that point. And even the Bible talks about the Pharisees and how they were, hypocrites and all that. So, and hypocrisy is especially strong in religions. Unfortunately, there's this false piety. There's people who are deceived about their special relation to God and all these things. Right? There's all these going on. A lot of people go through the motions with their religion where they don't really believe the stuff, but they go through it anyway. And there's a quote by Thomas Jefferson that I really like in his Notes on Virginia. He says, "Millions of innocent men, women, and children since the introduction of Christianity have been burnt, tortured, fined, and imprisoned. Yet we have not advanced 1 inch towards uniformity. What has been the effect of coercion to make one half of the world fools and the other half hypocrites?" So this is this open and closed thing again. If you're a fool if you believe the lie and you don't know and such, but you're a hypocrite if you know there's a problem, if you know there's a lie and you're promulgating these things. So.
There's an aspect to this that actually ties into Pascal's wager, which is if I'm right, I go to heaven, and if you're right, nothing happens. But if I'm right, you end up spending eternity in hell. Kind of this hedging your bets thing, which has more problems than we could probably discuss in a single show.
We did a whole show on it.
We've tried to, but one very telling problem with this Pascal's wager thing is the idea that if you accept the wager, you should then believe, as if belief were something that were subject to the will, when what's really happening is that you act as if you believe.
Right. You pretend to deceive God.
You haven't actually convinced yourself that it's true. You've convinced yourself that if you play along and act as if you believe, that this will work just the same.
And that's good enough for a lot of religions because they want to make their tithes or whatever, and if you pretend you're you believe and you tithe, they're happy.
Yeah, you got butts in the pews. And
Yeah, yeah. So, and this gets into, I think that a lot of religious leaders are con artists, and this is because they are attracted to the fools that these religions sort of get to bring together. Faith is just gullibility, and if you promulgate faith and gullibility, you're going to effectively get a lot of fools together, and this is why there's so many con artists in religions, and we have a list here of people who I believe are demagogues, and it's a long list, and I'm just going to go through it real quick here. And a lot of these people have been in the news lately. Pat Robertson, James Hagee, James Kennedy, Benny Hinn, James Dobson, Ken Ham, Robert Tilton, Oral Roberts, Richard Roberts, James Baker, Ann Coulter, Rick Scarborough, Donald Wilmington, Bill Donahue, Laura Schlesinger, Pope Ratzinger, Terry Randall, Tim and Beverly LaHaye, David Barton, Fred Phelps, Gary Bauer, Jerry Falwell, Jesse Helms, Jimmy Swaggart, John Ashcroft, Joseph McCarthy, Lieutenant General William Boykin, Pat Buchanan, Paul Cameron, Rick Santorum, Roy Moore, Tony Evans, Ted Haggart, Ken Hovind, David Koresh, Jim Jones, Peter Popov, Mother Teresa, Pope John Paul, Catherine Coleman, Amy Simple McPherson, Mary Baker Eddy, John Osteen, and on and on. This is just a little quick list I made. So,
and that's not to say that some of those people, or even all of them, have sincere beliefs about some of their things.
Sure.
It's just that there's a good reason to think that in many cases they're overextending what their sincere beliefs are in order to take advantage of people.
Right. So the meat of my show today is showing the insincerity, but I want to talk about the implications up front here. So the proof is still I still have the burden of proof here to make my claim.
Right.
So I'm saying if hypocrisy is a sign of deception, then religious hypocrisy is sort of an admission that the religion is bogus. So it's a really bad thing. It basically is an admission that the religion is bad. So if the promoters don't believe the religion, why should you? And if Christianity had a positive value, then deception wouldn't be necessary to promote it. So it's really a poisons the well as far as I'm concerned.
This idea that religion itself testifies to its own bogusness is something that Robert Ingersoll talked about in his lecture. It was either on gods or on ghosts. I can't remember which one. Mm-hmm. But basically he says, if you have one person who comes and says, I just saw the most amazing thing. I saw a man who was dead, raised from the dead, completely alive and reformed whole. It was awesome. And another man says, I know what you mean. I just saw the exact same thing, this guy raised from the dead. And what you have is the first person will call the other one a liar, and the second person will call the first person a liar. Now, why is that? It's because neither one of them actually saw what they claimed to see. Because if they had, they would agree with the other person, because that's corroborating evidence for their story. And within religion, you basically have a very similar situation where religion A claims this supernatural behavior or occurrence. Religion B makes a similar claim, and both of them accuse the other one of lying. And that's because on some level, they both know that they're lying. And that this is a testament to the fact that they're both, in fact, false. What we see on occasion is some religions will get together and especially among the newer religions, these kind of wishy-washy pantheistic things where, well, they're all true. They've all seen something, they're just not able to identify it correctly, and they've tapped into the very nature of God, but they kind of got the details wrong. No, that doesn't fly, because the claims of these religious groups are in direct conflict with each other. They can't both be true. They can't, Jesus can't be the one and only Son of God, and Muhammad can't also be the final prophet. Those are in conflict. They don't match.
Right.
And in the absence of evidence to corroborate either story, the only justifiable position is to reject both of them.
Well, they have to make the other religion false so that you are attracted to the one religion that they want to promote.
We've got our mojo's stronger. We've got the one true God.
Right. So with that introduction, I'd like to talk about today hospitals and funerals and the hypocrisy around those. A lot of hypocrisy with religion with respect to gay rights and abortion. And then major aspects of Christian theology. A lot of the religious claims are riddled with hypocrisy. And then if there's time, I'll talk about the Ten Commandments, which I would call the monuments to hypocrisy, because they're just so full of it. It's amazing. So what we can do is maybe do a couple of these, take some calls, and I'll do some more. How about that?
Sure.
That way we can mix things up a little bit. If you guys want to put up the phone number at some point, go ahead. So hospitals and funerals. If God has the power to heal, and if prayer works as advertised, why involve third parties? Why go to the hospital? Why go to doctors?
Why buy insurance?
Right. If disease is part of God's plan, why would you want to try to subvert God's will?
And incidentally, in this past week, there was a 14-year-old Jehovah's Witness who sued for the right to refuse medical treatment on religious grounds, and the judge allowed him to do so. And of course, he's dead now.
Oops.
Because, okay.
God must have really loved him.
You've got the right to your religion. Well, see, that's the thing. They'll rationalize this away as we didn't want to intervene in God's plan, and therefore
at least
he's
that's
died.
more consistent, right?
Well, is it? Maybe God's plan was for you to get your ass to the hospital where he's provided some medicine that might treat you. I mean, that you could look at that in a religious context as well. My thing is that while I somewhat agree with the judge's decision, because on the one hand, if a 14-year-old who was in a family full of Jehovah's Witnesses who were trying to deny him medical treatment said, "Hey, I don't believe this crazy stuff that my parents believe. I want the transfusion.
Help me out."
I think that the judge should go along with his wishes and protect him. So I don't want to be a hypocrite. And because I would approve the judge's decision in that sense, I think I would have to agree with the judge in this sense. I still think it's a shame that this kid died. And I think that there's another issue that further complicates this, which is when do we get involved with a minor child? I mean, I realize he's 14.
This gets into the whole parents' rights issue, which is a big can of worms.
It's a horrible can of worms.
Yeah.
And in general, I'd like to leave the responsibility with the parents. I'd like for I don't support the idea of the bureaucracy getting involved.
Should be responsible, right?
But there's also the issue of we have perhaps a duty to safeguard human life and protect people who can't protect themselves. I don't know to what degree. I certainly won't say for this one kid. I think it's a shame that his religious indoctrination led him to the point where he rejected something that could have extended his life, and perhaps
it's a very simple example of religion's not a good thing. I mean, he could have lived longer, presumably.
Yeah. Meanwhile, there are people of other religions who are shaking their head at this, who would probably agree with me that this is a terrible tragedy. That on the one hand, we need to protect his religious freedom, his free exercise. We need not violate that. On the other hand, we need to protect people who are too crazy to protect us. We do lock people up for things. And if you can't distinguish, if you can't give me evidence to show why your belief that blood is magic and therefore you can't taint yours with a transfusion even though it would save your life is different from a claim that somebody hears leprechauns talking to them, if you can't show me how those two claims are different and why there's evidence to think that yours is reliable.
Supposedly, American Indians didn't want to be photographed because they thought their soul would be stolen.
Yeah, but if you can't show any way to distinguish between the two, then I'm going to treat them as the same. I'm going to treat your claim that blood is magic the same as somebody's claim that leprechauns are talking to them, or that photographs steal their soul, or that they can talk to the dead, or that shifting furniture around is going to change the quality of my life, or taking water pills is going to cure me of something. It's all hooey until you can demonstrate otherwise.
Well, you can talk to the dead. They just don't talk back. Yeah. Okay. So why do believers go to doctors and hospitals when they're ill? Most believers do. A few of them don't. Christian Scientists don't. But the answer is because they don't believe. They don't believe the God stuff. They don't believe these rationalizations about God. They are there because they believe the doctors are going to help them. And then the doctors do the work, and then God steals the credit. That's kind of how it generally goes. Oh, it was a miracle that old Timmy was cured of whatever.
It's a miracle that this guy spent 16 years in school to figure out how to treat you. Yeah, that's a miracle.
Okay.
While this does speak as a testament to their faith, you said that the people who go to the hospital are the ones who are hypocrites, that they don't really believe, and I would agree. But I'd say that the Christian Scientists and Jehovah's Witnesses are also hypocrites, just not with regard to hospitals. Why do they feed their babies when they're born? You brought a life into the world. Shouldn't God provide for that life? Why should you feed the baby?
Right.
Why should you change the baby?
If God created life, right?
Why take care if
it's God's life?
Yeah.
Let him.
That's intervention. You're intervening in order to protect the child from deteriorating. How is that any different from refusing medical treatment? And for those of you out there who are responsible adults who buy into this notion that you should refuse medical treatment to your child, you are evil. When your kid dies, well, it's your fault.
It's harm. It's immoral.
You've done the harm. And I have no qualms at all about saying that. Yeah. You've done the harm. Live with it.
But atheists don't know anything about morals, right?
Yeah, we're just selfish people who.
Yeah.
You want to take this one?
No, let me do the funerals
point?
Along with it, because funerals is almost the same argument, right? If our bodies are just soul traps whose purpose is to release the soul, right, which is the real person who goes on to live forever, why do believers have funerals? Why do they attend funerals? Why are they the least bit sad at funerals? Why try to preserve bodies if your soul is the real McCoy?
Every funeral should be like a New Orleans funeral.
Yeah.
Let's have a party.
Let's have a party. That's how it should be. And the answer, again, is the Christians don't believe that stuff. They ultimately know that we will all die, and funerals are there to deal with that. And then, of course, there's all sorts of wonderful things going on in heaven. So that should be part of people's joy about death, is that their loved ones are going to heaven. And there's a quote that I just love to throw out every now and then. This is from Reverend Nathaniel Emmon, who lived from 1745 to 1840. He says, "The happiness of the elect will consist in part of witnessing the torments of the damned in hell, among whom will be their own children, parents, husbands, wives, and friends. But instead of taking part in their miserable being, they will say, 'Amen, hallelujah, praise the Lord.'" And this is because, and this hits it on the head, because in heaven you're going to be feeling bliss, and you're going to know everything. So you're going to know the fact that your loved ones are down there and suffering in hell. You get to watch, right? And you're going to be really, really happy about it. Isn't that great? I mean,
praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord.
Speaking of this thing, not only about the denial of treatment and things like that, we've spoken about it before, that if you are, in fact, a sincere believer, and you think that this life is a kind of a soul-testing mechanism, a place to wipe your feet or whatever, then those women who everybody seems to look at and say they're crazy, who kill their children in order to send them directly to heaven, they're the ones who are truly religious. Think about it, if you're only alive for, let's say, 80 years, but you're going to live forever after that, and this 80 years is largely irrelevant. And if you're going to be judged based on your beliefs and actions in this world, then any child you bring into it is in danger of hellfire.
That's right.
And the best thing you could possibly do
for that child
is to kill them immediately, so they get the free pass below the age of consent, for those of you who buy into this particular notion.
And then you repent and confess your sins, and you get to go to heaven,
right.
too.
Because we're focused on Christianity primarily. I don't mean to do that. There are Christians who don't even believe in a literal hell. There are Christians who don't necessarily accept the idea of heaven. But according to the Bible and Orthodox traditional Christianity, you can be forgiven of anything except denial of the Holy Spirit. You can be a murderer, a rapist, a child molester, a child killer. You can slaughter. You can commit genocide. You could poison Tylenol tablets and kill your neighbors and eat them. And as long as at the end of it you say, "Oh, I'm sorry, Jesus is Lord, and I apologize, and I love you, and please forgive me," you get to go to heaven. And somebody who lived a good life, or a reasonably good life, or just a better life than your crappy one, who was honest about what they could and couldn't believe, that were intellectually honest, and by merely saying, "I don't believe this," they're not only don't get forgiven, but can't possibly be forgiven. if at any point, I mean, I don't know why people are praying for me now, and why there are people in my family and friends and everything else who are hoping that that God will reveal Himself to me so that I can return to the Christian fold, because there's no point in it. Obviously, if your book's correct, I'm screwed. And there's no point in God ever revealing Himself to me, despite the fact that, several of us have asked many, many times over. Ray Comfort swears up and down he can demonstrate God to anybody in just a minute, and yet he fails every time he tries. But his example is, if you want to know if God exists, just ask Him and He'll tell you. Okay?
Been there, done that.
Yeah. Evidently, I either wasn't sincere. Here I am several years ago, way before I was doing the show in the Atheist Community of Boston or anything else, and I was a sincere believer. My only goal was to come up with the evidence and arguments that would help support the faith that I had and encourage other people to come to Jesus. Couldn't possibly have been more sincere in this pursuit. If God didn't demonstrate Himself to me then...
You were too sincere. Yeah. You weren't a hypocrite. That's what your problem.
Yeah. Maybe I should have been a little more hypocritical at the time, and, God would have magicked Himself into my room and said, "Hey, buddy."
Well, one more thing on the death thing is, maybe you might be sad because your loved one has gone away for a while, but religious believers believe that they can talk to their dead relatives, right? So they're not really gone. So that kind of defeats that whole issue. Let's take a call, sure, and then I'll come back to more.
We got, is it George?
Yes.
How you doing?
Oh, fine. How are you?
Good.
Well, I don't know how you guys make such an interesting show every week.
I don't either.
Religion's an interesting subject.
Yeah, it is.
We're religion geeks. Isn't that weird? Isn't that strange?
You guys probably know more about religion than religious people.
We might. So, some of us definitely do.
Is there any limit, to most of the population, what type of scam they'll believe? Does it have any limit to it, or will they believe absolutely anything?
Well, P.T. Barnum, who had the Barnum and Bailey Circus, said there was a sucker born every minute, and there's another quote: "Nobody ever went broke underestimating the stupidity, gullibility of people." Right? So yeah.
I think you'd probably be able to find somebody who will believe almost anything, and you don't have to look far. You can jump on the internet and end up with 50,000 conspiracies that everything from various hypotheses about 9/11 being an inside job, right up to reptilian aliens taking over the global banking system, preparing to enslave us all. You've got television programs all over the place that play to, I think, partly the fears and curiosities that we all experience. You've got, I don't know how many shows about people talking to the dead and getting answers from the dead. You've got this ghost hunter specials and feng shui and shock. You can sell somebody anything as long as you put a good spin on it and hit the emotional triggers within that individual that make them respond. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons that I think religion as a scam has been so effective is because it early on keyed in to the core fundamental fears, questions, and emotional triggers of individuals.
The fear of death is a big one.
What happens after you die? You don't have to worry about that anymore. It's taken care of. You've lost a loved one. We realize that you're sad. You're sad that they'll no longer be with you. And actually somebody had called in to say that he objected, Schilling actually, that he objected to us saying that Christians don't really believe in an afterlife because they grieve the loss of a dead relative by playing to the example, what about a kid going away to college? They're still upset about that. So there's two aspects to this. One, you are sad for a loss. And religion plays on that and says, yes, we understand you're sad, but you don't need to remain sad. You can cope with this and get over it by resting assured that they're now in a better place, that they're looking down on you and they're waiting for you to join them when your life is over. Well, that can be incredibly comforting. Doesn't make it true.
You guys should do a show on the psychology of scams.
If I was a psychologist, I'd love to.
That would be a good topic.
Maybe I can get somebody on.
Well, I tell you, it's frightening, though. To think that most of the population can be manipulated in any way possible to commit basically, I mean, you know, like the Inquisition or something, just by convincing them of a scam.
Those who believe absurdities can be convinced to commit atrocities.
That's
I
Voltaire.
got that out my bathroom window. There's
Yeah.
a mirror there, you know.
It's one of my all-time favorite quotes. Yeah, and I think I don't want to exclude any of us. You know, I'm not doing holier than thou.
I've been manipulated myself.
Everybody.
And it's just something to guard against.
Yeah, I think everybody can be manipulated under the right circumstances. Everybody can be convinced of something that isn't true. In part because of the emotional triggers, in part because we're not infallible. We make mistakes. And people can sincerely believe things that they've been convinced of by making mistakes. And I think that's the general truth behind most people who accept supernatural claims, religious or otherwise. They sincerely believe it. They've been convinced that it's true. The problem is that what convinced them is something that should not convince. I can't count the number of times somebody's called in to relate a personal story of, well, a friend or relative of mine was sick, and we were sure they were going to die, and you know, we all prayed, and they got better. Okay. You know, I'll jump back. I've cited Russell's dad's comment about 1 billion times on the show. If he had a headache, and he took an aspirin and said a prayer, and God healed him. Whoa. What about the aspirin?
Right.
You're not really being fair and objective in considering the evidence.
What's the difference between correlation and causation?
Yes.
Right, and that's an important thing. I think part of the problem here is that they don't teach a lot of critical thinking skills in schools. They sort of teach you to regurgitate what was said, and they don't teach you to think for yourself. And that's an important skill. It's something you actually have to learn. You have to spend some time honing and practicing, and that's something I think atheists do as a pastime, if you will. That we look for scams, we look for problems, and we try to exercise our critical thinking skills. We argue with each other, and it's kind of like sparring, you know, in a boxing rink or whatever. You get to try out your knowledge and your skills, and you get to point out, oh, this doesn't add up because it's a fallacy of some sort or whatever. And this makes you, I think, smarter in a sense, but more importantly, it makes you less susceptible to scams that are out there, and there's plenty of them, as you're pointing out. There's tons and tons of scams out there.
Well, I tell you, especially I've seen, you know, like these religious people, they love to go after old people. And
it's
you know,
sad. It's
I've seen it I've seen it personally, and boy, the religious people will just go right after an old person and try to get their money and everything.
Right.
It's
prey on the fears. Prey on fear usually.
Yeah, the older you are, of course, the closer you are to death. Thanks for calling in, George. Appreciate it. It reminds me of a quote from a friend of the show, who I won't get the whole name. His name's Chris, just so he'll know. He's got a quote that he uses as his email tag, which I absolutely love, which is one of the reasons why I support religious education in schools, and by that I'm talking about comparative religions and things like that. I'm not even opposed necessarily to courses on the Bible, as long as they're done from a secular point of view where they're not proselytizing. And his quote is, teach a child one religion and you indoctrinate them. Teach a child many religions and you inoculate them. And I haven't heard anything that I would consider more true than that.
I love that.
That the best, you know, there's several quotes where the best case for or the best cause for atheism is to read the Bible.
That's Isaac Asimov. Yeah.
And the idea that broadening one's knowledge and understanding about the world around you, coming to some kind of understanding about all the religions of the world, and investigating how they started, how they probably started, what we can learn, you know, anthropologically by studying these cultures and these ancient traditions. They tell us a lot about who we were, and they tell us about who we are. Because, well, you know, while we're changing as a species and growing and our understanding is increasing, we're not that far removed from the barbarians who ran around sacking the villages around them. We have kind of progressed to be much more civilized in the sense that we define it, but that's not some absolute, that we're now so far above that we can't recognize.
Well, we've
the
created some pretty wonderful societies, but they're fragile. They can be destroyed.
And what we're seeing, and there were a number of news articles about it in this past week, are areas where that fragile society is being imposed upon by religious groups. There's this teddy bear case. I don't know if you brought that in at all. Or
No, I didn't. But go ahead and bring it up.
A British teacher who's teaching in Sudan, her students had a teddy bear in the class, and they chose to name it Muhammad. She didn't, whether or not she realized she was doing anything wrong or not, we're not aware of. She was caught, I guess. I don't know how you catch somebody, but anyway, somebody reported her.
Scandal, right?
And they found her guilty of blasphemy, sentenced her to 15 days in jail. It's outrageous. It's insane. But the story doesn't end there. Now there are protests going on, or there were recently. And when I first read protests, I was like, great, let's get some people down there to show how stupid these religious laws are, and that, yes, okay, you don't like it when somebody speaks out against your God. By the way, the name of this coffee cup is now officially Muhammad. Bite me. But I figure, okay, they're having protests on behalf of the teacher. They weren't.
No,
there were protesters out there saying that the government had been far too lenient and that they should execute her. Execute her for letting her class name a teddy bear Muhammad. Mm-hmm. Muslims face a crisis right now because there are some very reasonable Muslims out there who have turned away from the barbaric things in their Quran and say, hey, we're a religion of peace. We really are. We promise. Hand to Allah, if we were allowed to swear. And yet they're fighting this public relations nightmare because there's a significant group of Muslims. I have no idea if they're a vocal minority, if they're actually the majority. And the reason that I can't tell the difference is because the Muslims who are supposed to be reasonable and peaceful aren't doing anything to clean house. And so you have these insane acts which end up being the public face of Islam to the world. Islam needs to clean its own house. You need to convince people that you are the religion of peace. And if there's only a minority of you who are doing it, then you need to fight with those people within your religions and raise public consciousness to say we're separate. Stop using the name. It's the exact same thing with Christians. Exactly. Don't sit there at home and say, aha, they finally stopped attacking Christianity and gone after the true evil religion. No, yours is just as evil. You guys are just behaving because the secular society that you live in forces you to. You've had to graduate from the barbaric things that are in your book, where it says to kill witches, to kill homosexuals, to kill unruly children. You don't do that anymore. You reject it and you've changed the public image. But you've got fundamentalist Christians who are extremists, like the Phelps, like the Dominionists, like those people who would like to turn the United States, for example, into a theocracy. And then you've got a bunch of moderate and liberal Christians who are eminently reasonable, but they're not doing anything to counteract what these nut jobs are doing.
And I don't really think you can expect them to. And the reason is that everybody makes their own deal with God, right? I pray to God, God, give me all the goodies in heaven, and everybody's making their own individual deal with this deity, and there's no reason at all for you to interfere with somebody else's deal with God, whatever that might be. So this is this whole idea of religious tolerance. Whatever anybody else wants to do is just fine as long as they believe in God, And who am I to interfere with their relationship with God? Who am I to speak out about Andrea Yates killing her kids? Because that's between God and Andrea Yates.
And that's where I say if you take that tact, fine. When I speak out about the horrible things with regard to Christians, perhaps I'm not referring to you specifically, but as long as you continue to use the label and continue to use the exact same book to justify something else, you fit the bill. I don't want to paint all Christians with one brush. I don't do that. I'm not ridiculous. I realize that some of you don't believe in a literal hell. Some of you realize that the Bible says nothing about abortion. Some of you reject those things in the Bible where it says, where it puts down homosexuals. There are Christian churches run by homosexuals, attended by homosexuals. They've just completely reinterpreted the Bible to fit their needs. I don't know how they can. I mean, it's pretty straightforward what it says in Leviticus, but they've done it. And you know what? Kudos. But why couldn't you pick another name? If you can rewrite and recreate a religion, if you can,
why bring along all the baggage?
You don't need this book for anything, and you don't need the label. If you want to create a new religion that is positive, that has none of the negative trappings of these other religions, do it. Please do it. I'm all in favor of keeping everything that's positive from religions and chucking the negative stuff. So if you want to make a new religion and say that this is a positive one, great. I'd rather your beliefs were based on rational judgments. I'd rather that your beliefs not be dogmatic or religious in any way, that we can evaluate evidence and come to some conclusions. But by all means, if you want to create a religion that's peaceful and reasonable, do so, and jettison the books and the baggage and the labels, because all you're doing is muddying the waters. You're voluntarily saying, yeah, I'm not really like the Phelps family, but we're both Christians. Okay. You know what? I'm not like either one of you.
By most metrics, the Phelps are better Christians than you know.
They're not the hypocrites, which is exactly what we're talking about.
They actually walk the walk and
which
talk the talk.
Really brings us to the next point in kind of what you were talking about with regard to hypocrisy.
Sure. Well, let's talk about abortion. Because I think there's some serious hypocrisy going on.
Let's talk about sex, baby.
Okay. So if the stated goal is to reduce abortions, then why are Christians working, again, I'm painting a broad brush here, why are Christians working so hard at promoting policies that increase abortions, right? They're sabotaging birth control methods and sex education. There's the abstinence-only thing. There's sex ed being sabotaged, a morning after pill, gag rules, defunding family planning. We've got, pharmacists being told to interfere with people's getting their prescriptions filled by religious leaders such as Pope Ratzinger.
All of those actions lead to more unwanted pregnancies.
That's right.
Which lead to more abortions.
Right.
I realize that that they're not the cause of it. That by denying somebody contraception, you're not the cause of the abortion. That's still a choice that they end up making. Fine. I agree 100%. You don't even need to call in with that crappy apologetic. The real thing is you're imposing your moral values on other people, and then the end result is contrary to what you're trying to achieve. It's hypocritical. It's self-defeating.
Right. And there's lots of countries that have had very good success, and when we've had family planning and these sorts of things, we actually reduce the number of unwanted pregnancies and reduce the number of abortions.
Yeah. Meanwhile, abstinence-only programs like they have in Lubbock, Texas, have resulted in some of the highest rates of sexually transmitted diseases in teens and unwanted pregnancies in teens.
Right.
Abstinence works. Abstinence-only doesn't. Get over it. It's a fact. I don't know why do people keep raising this? It's kind of like the creation evolution thing in schools. Mm-hmm. Drives me crazy. There's no point in raising it anymore. You lost. Get over it. Come up with some evidence to support what you want to put in there. Show how it is science.
Then we can talk, right? Come in the front door.
Yeah.
Don't deceive us.
Look, evolution hasn't explained everything yet, so therefore God did it. No. That's not the way things work.
Right.
And your idea that your God doesn't want people to have sex outside of marriage and is opposed to contraception, so we're going to teach abstinence only. Sorry, that doesn't work either. And what it is, in fact, is you imposing your moral values, which I don't think are moral values at all, on other people. And you're doing it by legislation. You're doing it.
And then you're not taking responsibility for the consequences of that public policy.
I thought the whole point of Christianity was that people are free to choose whether or not they're going to follow God. People were free to choose whether or not they would accept the moral codes that you accept. And yet what you're doing is attempting to enforce those moral codes out of some, misguided notion that this is a Christian nation. If you mean that this nation is primarily made up of people who are Christians, you're right. If you mean it was founded on Christian principles, you're wrong. 100% wrong, completely wrong. People called in before early on would say things like, well, haven't you ever read the Bible? Yeah, haven't you ever read anything else?
Yeah.
What are the first three words of the Constitution of the United States? We the people.
Yep.
That's where our rights derive from. When President Bush goes on to say that he wants to appoint judges that understand that our rights are derived from God, he's committing treason. He's sworn to uphold the Constitution, and he's violating it right there. His faith-based initiatives, his wanting to put judges in there, that to me is treason, because the Constitution, there were votes among the Founding Fathers about whether or not include language that specifically addressed God. And in every case, God was voted out of the Constitution. The only addressment of religion in the Constitution is Article 6, where it says that no religious test shall ever be required for any public office, period. Don't tell me the Constitution mentions God because at the end it says in the year of our Lord. Sorry, that's
That's
dog
really
don't
lame.
hunt.
That's really lame. Yeah.
Get back to your rights.
So
issue.
on the abortion question, you know, I've raised this question: why are there these people's behavior of actually trying to increase abortions or trying to increase something at odds with their claim of wanting to reduce abortions? And my answer, which you're welcome to call in and tell me I'm wrong and tell me a better answer, I'd love to hear a better answer, is that the Christians want to increase the population of believers, and abortion is just a means to an end. They want to manipulate women into making more babies, and if those babies are poor and ignorant, that's okay. That's all the better, because they're easier to indoctrinate. So if they're in the business of creating poverty, that's fine. If they're in the business of creating ignorance, that's fine. And so these same people that are interfering with family planning are defunding child care and making it harder for single women to have children. They've created these faith-based charity initiatives so that if you do come to charity from government charity, it's going to come with some strings attached as far as faith goes. And this is because the Christian God has no ability to create people, to create believers. So they have to the religions have to co-opt the sex organs of believers and other people so that they can make more believers as part of their breeding program. So that's my answer for why the abortion thing. And religions don't want to pay for it because they know it's expensive and they know it'll make it look like they're the parasites that they are. So there's my answer for why the abortion hypocrisy, but you may have a different one. Let's take a few calls.
Yeah, let's grab a few calls real quick. We got Bridget.
Oh, hi. I hate to.
Ooh, we're loud.
I hate to change the topic here.
That's okay.
It's really important, but I am wondering what your guys' view on near-death experience is.
Well, we don't fully understand the brain, but we do have a good enough understanding of the brain to say that everything that we know about near-death experiences is plausibly explained by, I hate to say normal brain function, because at the time the brain is kind of malfunctioning. The interesting things to me are that in cases where this has been tested, where we've done good controlled experiments on either a near-death experience or an out-of-body experience, which is similar, we find that there's no reason to believe that the person actually left their body. For example, if you're lying on a bed and there's a dresser next to you, we could put a note or something that you don't know about on top of the dresser, and during your experience ask you to look, and in the cases where they've done this, they can't identify it. They cannot see anything that they can't have already known about or imagine. But with near-death experiences, the thing that I find most telling that makes me kind of dismiss it as semi-normal brain function is that when somebody has a near-death experience, invariably, it agrees with their religion. Catholics see Catholic imagery, Protestants see Protestant imagery and Protestant notions of hell. Hindus and Buddhists and Jainists and anybody else from any other religion sees the imagery that's consistent with their understanding of religion. Some people might go the route of the pantheistic idea I talked about earlier, where they're saying, well, they're all experiencing something real, and God presents Himself to them based on that. Yeah, okay. If you're going to make an excuse or a case that's completely untestable, that's all inclusive, that explains away any of the evidence, then it's useless. So while I have no doubt that people have near-death experiences, and I think some of the common near-death experiences go along the lines of alien abduction stories, where the near-death experience of the long tunnel of heading towards the light, and that's become so ingrained in the public consciousness, like the flashing lights and the gray aliens with the big eyes, that the stories start to become similar. Our brains are incredibly complex.
And there may be some legitimate similarity because we're all wired more or less the same way.
We are. But the complexity of the brain and how the brain responds to things is going to be similar because we're similar. But as soon as we start feeding it information,
oh yeah,
I don't know that anything original has come out of those. But
Do you believe in life after death?
Nope.
No,
we haven't seen any evidence for it.
I guess it depends on how you define it, but in the way most people would define it, no. When I'm dead, I'm dead.
Okay. Interesting. Well, thank you very much, and I really appreciate you guys being on here.
Thanks, Bridget. Appreciate the call.
Let me do a follow-up on that. I mean, we don't believe in life after death, therefore, this life is very precious and very important to us, and we value it a lot. I think if you believe in life after death and you believe that we are just soul traps, you're not going to value human life, right? Because it's the soul that really matters, right?
Yeah.
So,
and not just the idea that it's the soul that really matters. I think that death actually adds a value to life.
yeah, it's an interesting philosophical thing, right?
Not just because it's an end. I mean, when you're working on a project, the end is when you feel like you've accomplished something. If a project was never ending, you'd have this constant kind of anxiety. But the big thing is if you live 100 years and it's over, then that 100 years has immense value. But if you live 100 years, and that's only the first 100 years of an infinite number of years that you're going to spend in an afterlife, then this 100 years has no value at all. It's useless.
I'd make a slightly different argument that is, if you believe you're going to have 72 virgins in heaven at your disposal, how long is it going to be before you get tired of those 72 virgins?
Yeah.
How many million years, are you going to be real excited about 72?
And how long do they stay virgins?
Anyway.
As a reminder, since the studio put the note up there and I've forgotten, we do go to IHOP after the show. Anybody in the Austin area who'd like to join us who's atheist or atheist friendly is welcome to join us. It's at the corner of I-35 and Cesar Chavez. The address is on the screen. We're on the air for about another 38 minutes or so till 4:30, and we'll be done at IHOP around 5 o'clock till roughly 7-ish. So get that note in there before I get beaten on the head for not mentioning IHOP again. We got, is it Phil?
Yeah, it is.
How you doing, Phil?
Just fine. Listen, I want to bring up this thing about the Republican debate they had the other night. That retired gay general said, hey, why don't you guys let gays in the military? And Mitt Romney had the temerity to say, well, most people that join the military are from these Judeo-Christian families, and because of that, they can't put up with gays in the military. And he even brought up Israel as an example of, Israelis let gays in their military, thinking for some reason they're not part of this Judeo-Christian sensibility.
I missed that.
I'm not gay, but this just outraged me of the strange logic of these people, man.
I think it's a prime example that every time you hear the word Judeo-Christian, they mean Christian. You don't ever hear Jews say Judeo-Christian.
Apparently not.
Well, the Jews became Christians' little buddies after World War II and the Holocaust, when after centuries of persecuting Jews, they're all of a sudden, they're our little buddies now. We're Judeo-Christian. It's very disingenuous.
And I guess what Mitt was really trying to say is that we've done a fine enough job of indoctrinating these people to make them totally intolerant of anybody else. So I wanted to bring that up. But I also want to ask you, I didn't catch the first couple of minutes of your show. Did y'all do a nonprofit yesterday?
Yep.
Cool, so I can listen to that at work tomorrow.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure you'll be thrilled.
Cool. That's one of my...
Oh, you know this caller?
I ripped the Pope to shreds yesterday.
Oh, great. Well, cool, because that's one of my main escapisms at work. I get to listen to iPod stuff.
Cool.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot, Phil.
Bye.
Yeah, Phil calls in from time to time, and I knew he was one of the nonprofit shows. We've got, is it Chloe?
Hello, men.
How you doing, Chloe?
Oh, I'm doing okay. I really want to tell you that today's show is extra super, so thank you both.
Okay, I'm glad to hear it.
Sure, and it is it's still a very important time, especially now, to think about this papacy and how you would think that after all these hundreds of years that people would just start doing their own personal research. Let's just not forget that you were talking about abortion rights a while ago also, and just really talking about even cultural imagery and how we have come so far in society. Having studied all these different religions and just in sort of a brief summary of what it's all about, it's been a lot of suffering and a lot of fear, and I think so many in the old days, and it's coming back unfortunately, but perhaps we will overcome. As a woman and as a grandmother, and having heard all these stories about our family, that fear that has come from Christianizing because of the fear of women's creativity, and I know there's a lot of men too, super guys like you all, like my boyfriend, like our very misunderstood Madeline O'Hare. She was sick for a whole bunch of years before it came really out in public, and I knew her personally. She had so much good to say, and I myself made a mistake because I couldn't understand how sick she was. But it's just I still can't believe how there is still all this ignorance, and if you don't even go with the flow at times in simple conversation, that you are the problem, and we're not the problem. And it just, now having grandchildren, I'm telling them a different story than what they're learning and hearing in school. And then, but thank goodness that my children do know the truth. And I know there's a lot of children out there and parents that do know the truth. And I know that we will overcome all this. But it was all, as far as the woman, okay, guys, because you're talking about abortion and stuff, trying to make us subservient. And John Paul II, and it's not that long ago where he came here preaching all kinds of crap, and that has stayed with the people in the White House and the other people that want to be politicians. And I'm looking at you all straight in the eye, and sometimes I can't get all the words out that I want to because I have had a stroke. But personal choice goes back. Personal freedoms, especially the freedoms of religion, goes back a long time. And my God, during the Inquisition, if you even, oh my God, you're going to be persecuted for even maybe you're thinking that that's not it. And mythology was awesome in the old days, but that's in the old days. And we need to remember that, we're not in those old days anymore. And as free thinkers and evolutionists and atheists, atheist is still a bad word to some. We're going to have to continue this fight. Indeed, it is a fight, but I encourage everyone that is listening to my voice, and damn me if you want, but do your own research. It's very easy. If you can read, if you can sit up and find out for yourself that we are a culmination of culture, of different cultures. It has nothing to do with that. We can make a point and be intelligent by far more without thinking that we need to be enchained with these myths. And I want to thank you so much. And as I, and really, it is still about hypocrisy. That is probably one of the best words that has ever been created. Mm-hmm. And the hell with the procreationists, because it's not about that at all. When you start to look at your grandchildren and you look at yourself and you say, oh, I'm just an older gorilla now. It's not so bad after all. Okay?
Thanks a lot, Chloe.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The comment that the Pope made, which we hammered him for yesterday, I don't want to spend too much time on it today.
Yeah, there's about 8 or 10 Pope things. That we
basically, he made the claim that atheism is responsible for the greatest cruelty and injustice, and that men without belief in God can have no hope. You're wrong on both counts. You're an idiot, and you're evil. My coffee cup will forever be named Muhammad. But as far as Pope Ratzinger or Pope
Bambi, whatever.
Benedict, and I mispronounced that on purpose. I don't get it. The idea that you can stand up there and claim to be the inerrant voice of God on this planet and send out a message that is utterly and completely false, that doesn't even make sense from a philosophical standpoint, but that contradicts known facts, and use this as your message of hope to everybody, that, oh, they need to have God or they can't have any hope. That's nonsense. I have hope for a brighter future, or I wouldn't be bothering to do this show. I have hope that some people will relinquish the chains of religion that have shackled their mind and embraced reality. And not only do I have that hope, but that hope is constantly reproved. We got a couple of email messages this week from individuals who used to be fundamentalist Christians, and because of the work that people have done on this show and other shows, because of books by Dawkins and others, they've changed their mind and they've embraced reality, they've abandoned superstition, and because of that, the opportunity for the world to be brighter in the future is now greater. I have hope. I don't need any God for it at all.
Yep.
And I don't need any Pope, but I'm glad you're there, Pope. And I hope you live for another 80 years, because every time you open your mouth, you're an embarrassment to religionists and Catholics in particular, everywhere. And all you're doing is driving more and more people away from religion. You open your mouth about Muslims and you're embarrassed and you have to recant yourself. Now you've opened your mouth about atheists. I doubt we'll see any kind of apology from you. But anybody with any sense knows how patently absurd it is for you to claim that atheism is responsible for cruelty. Please explain how you can get from, I don't believe a God exists, to, I need to be cruel to people. There's no bridge there. Atheism says nothing at all about morality or what one should or shouldn't do. However, you can get from, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live, to the Salem witch trials. Religion has been responsible for more cruelty and injustice than atheism could ever possibly. Atheism can't possibly be responsible for any of it. Just because people have made mistakes in the absence of belief in God doesn't mean that atheism is responsible. You're absurd, you're obscene, and I hope you live until every Catholic has abandoned belief. But
well, he's the the quintessential Catholic, right? He's the very best Catholic they could find, right?
Yeah, we lost a couple of calls.
That's okay. I actually have a little more material I'd like to hit.
There's one waiting, but there was a call that asked a question. If you're calling back, I apologize. I'm going to answer it real quick. Why doesn't personal revelation count as a way of knowing? It does, to you and you alone. If you have a personal revelation, it's necessarily only valid to you. Independent confirmation is impossible. As soon as you open your mouth and say that you've had a revelation, now that is necessarily secondhand information. It's hearsay. A revelation to you doesn't prove anything to me. And how we go about defining reality is based on corroboration from other individuals. It's, I might believe that Muhammad here is a peacock.
Or start making predictions that come true. Pick tomorrow's lottery numbers and go win the lottery, and then come tell us.
I might believe that Muhammad here is a peacock, but in fact, if I ask around and the independent testing reveals that it's in fact a coffee cup, I'm going to have to change something. There's some reality that I'm going to have to be consistent with. So go ahead.
Okay.
I'm going to drink from Muhammad.
You didn't drink from Muhammad there. Okay. Well, I didn't want to let the show end without talking about some of the hypocrisy in Christian theology, which is really sort of what they promote as this is how it is, right? So atheists raise the question of the problem of evil, which was stated very eloquently by Epicurus, back in 290 BCE, right? BCE.
Yep.
Either God wants to abolish evil and cannot, or he can and chooses not to. If he wants to and cannot, he's impotent. If he does not want to, he is wicked. If God can abolish evil and God really wants to do it, why is there evil in the world? This is a problem of evil. It's never been answered properly in my mind, by Christians, but they come up with this rationalization that they call a theodicy, which is that there is evil because God gave humans free will. Okay, that's their rationalization for it. But Christians don't believe that. And the reason they don't believe that is that if they really thought that God gave everybody free will, they wouldn't try to steal it. Thou shalt not steal. They wouldn't try to steal it from people by sabotaging the autonomy of women in choosing their reproduction. They wouldn't sabotage the gays trying to get married. They wouldn't sabotage minority religions. They wouldn't persecute Jews. They wouldn't do all these things because if they really thought that it was a gift from God, it's not theirs to steal. So they don't really believe their own free will rationalization. They don't believe it, and their actions prove they don't believe it. So they really have no answer to the problem of evil. You know, this whole theodicy, this whole rationalization is just that. It's just noise. They don't believe it.
I'm with you.
You're with me. Okay. You want to do another one?
Actually...
Well, we got some callers now.
And
okay.
Is this Nat?
Yeah, this is Nat.
Did you hear the answer I gave to the question?
I heard the answer, but that actually, I might have phrased my question poorly.
Ask away.
I basically was asking if there's a good way to explain to someone that they shouldn't blindly trust what they consider to be the personal revelations they've received from God. Because this weekend, I had talked to two Mormons with a friend of mine, and we were talking to them about these personal revelations they had.
Right.
And trying to maybe persuade them to question them, but they seemed not very willing to do so for obvious reasons.
Yeah, and in general, we're pretty bad about that. If we are convinced that we've experienced something, we tend to hold that as one of the highest possible bits of evidence. You know, I saw it with my own eyes, but your eyes can be fooled. Every one of your senses can be fooled. Matter of fact, the only reason we trust them is because they independently confirm each other. I know that there's water here in Muhammad because I can see that it's water. I can hear that it's not carbonated, so that would count. I can smell it, et cetera. I can taste it. The independent confirmation from all the senses is what makes them reliable. Any one sense can be fooled, and as a matter of fact, we can fool all the senses. And there's, the idea that just because they believe they've had something personally revealed to them, okay, perhaps it's true for them. The question is, why should anybody else accept it? I can't argue against personal revelation. If God talks to you, cool. All I can say is he doesn't talk to me.
Yeah. Well, anyways, thanks for doing the show. Thanks to your host and everyone working there and everyone that comes in over the years. I've been watching a bunch of online. It is great stuff.
Thanks, Nat.
Yep.
Greatly appreciate it.
Have a nice day.
You too. Yeah, personal revelation, okay. I mean, you might as well tell me you were abducted by aliens and you have no evidence for it. There's no reason for anybody else to believe you. And when we're talking about what is and isn't reality, coming up with the reasons to justify that everybody accept that this is true, that's what reality is. I mean, the shared experience that's confirmed.
It's objective, yeah.
And another question, Chuck?
Yeah, here's my question. Is there room in atheism for I just don't know?
Sure.
That's how I feel. I don't believe in the dogma of Christianity or any of the others. But
yeah, knowledge.
There's an awful lot I don't know.
Knowledge actually isn't an issue at all. In the simplest definition, a theist is anybody who believes that a God exists. Anything less than that, doubt, don't believe that no God exists, anything short of actually believing a God exists qualifies as atheism, which is why, and you can be a Gnostic theist, an agnostic theist, a Gnostic atheist, an agnostic atheist. I don't like to draw down those distinctions. If you're a theist, you believe in a God, anything less short of that belief, you're an atheist. Now, whether or not you want to use the label, whether or not it's the best description to you, that's a call you got to make for yourself. But yeah, I'd say that qualifies.
Great.
Is that it?
That's it.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Chuck. Appreciate it.
Let me hit another one.
All right.
More theology, more hypocrisy in theology. If you believe that Jesus died for your sins and that Jesus is Lord, which is the Trinity, which a lot of Christians claim both of those things, then your God is dead. All right? If Jesus died and Jesus is your God died. Okay? It's time to find a better one. Or He didn't die, and there's no sacrifice. So sacrifice is all just emotional manipulation. So Christians really don't believe this.
I was about to object to that.
Yeah?
I was about to object to that because within Christendom, it's the resurrection that matters. It's the resurrection that's the absolution. But you're right in what you say in that there was no sacrifice. I mean, come on, let's get real. I apologize because this is definitely going to offend somebody. But if you're a god and you come down and you take human form and you live for a few years, you take one hell of a beating, according to Mel Gibson.
Blood and guts flying everywhere.
They hang you up on a cross, and you bleed out, and you die. And then a day and a half later, oh, by the way, those of you who want to claim it's 3 days, you're wrong. But a day and a half later, you get to not only come back to life, but you get to be a god. What the hell sacrifice is that? To quote somebody else, at least when Elvis died for my sins, he stayed dead.
Right.
That was
he really made a sacrifice.
That's
right?
a sacrifice. Giving up a weekend is not a sacrifice. And a short weekend, a half one. I died Friday and got up Sunday morning and everything was fine. Good for you, buddy.
Okay, here's another one. Supposedly, Christians believe the path to heaven is follow the teachings of Jesus. Right?
Amen.
In fact, even we get it mails all the time. I'm a true Christian. True Christians follow the teachings of Jesus. Well, in Luke 14:33, whoever he be of you that forsaketh not all that he hath, he cannot be my disciple. Or in Mark 10, 17 to 21, obey the commandments and give everything to the poor and follow me. So you're supposed to get rid of your wealth and give it to the poor, not to the Pope, but to the poor. P-O-O-R, not P-O-P-E. So how many true Christians are there? I don't know of any. I don't know of any true Christians. The ones that might qualify are the people ranting on the street corner that are basically mentally ill and don't have any money because they can't earn a job. But that's not, I don't think they're trying to follow Jesus. I don't think that's the reason they're there. I think they're there because they're mentally ill. So, but how many true Christians are there? There's not many. And I think much of Christianity these days is about projecting wealth or power. We have the prosperity gospel. We have co-opting of national institutions and such. Our own state board of education is being co-opted by the religionists.
They want us to be Kansas.
Yeah, I'd prefer it be Kansas. Anyway, so Christians don't believe this stuff. They just want to pretend that sort of thing. So you want to take some more calls, or you want to comment on that?
No, we can take calls. Is it Jeff? Hello, Jeff?
Howdy.
How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing all right. I'd like to ask you a question personally, but you might take it personal, so I'd ask you to respond as if you were the ACLU and tell me why nobody's ever sued the federal government for hiring chaplains. Now, I want to tell you first, I was born and raised to be a Christian fundamentalist, and I had to listen to preachers tell me there's no atheists in the foxholes.
Yeah.
But from my experience in Vietnam with the Marines, and they're a crazy bunch of guys, we really didn't give a damn. And we had one chaplain on my base in Phu Bai, which was a few miles from the DMZ. That's a totally demolished zone. And we fought hard all day and all night. We chased Vietnamese wars and smoked pot. And our chaplain had one of them big Irish noses from drinking whiskey. And to the best of my knowledge, the only person that ever attended his services was a guy that we think he was gay. And so much for that. But anyway, my point is, chaplains are a violation of the Constitution. In other words, the taxpayers, atheists, Christians, Buddhists, Muslims, terrorists, Osama bin Laden, we have to support those guys.
Yeah, here's the thing.
And the worst thing is that they're officers. You have to salute them assholes. And, this is a clear violation. Why hasn't the ACLU ever sued the federal government to fire all the chaplains? And there's another thing, the same line. If your house was burning down, the same time a church was burning down in a small town with one fire engine, they're going to put out the fire in the church and let your house burn down. It's like expendable.
Yeah.
And this is another violation of the Constitution.
Especially since churches don't pay taxes.
To practice your religion, but the Constitution never granted the church freedom from taxation.
Yeah.
And these are two issues that cut right to the core, of what you guys are talking about. For whatever it's worth to you, I have a firm and unshakable belief in God, but I'm totally opposed to all organized religions.
Yeah.
I believe that God is one thing. The only way you can ever know anything about God is to approach God as an individual. The minute you join a group, you're like an insect. Insects are born communists. Like ants, for example, they live and die for the group. Even the queen is not a queen in a human sense, but just an egg-laying machine.
Yep.
They have a collective life, and the only way you can know anything about God, like the way I do, is if you approach God as an individual in humility and quit trying to prove a point. Because I believe the supreme creator of the universe really is supreme. It doesn't give a damn what some cockroach on planet Earth thinks. So I'm amused at your lectures over TV. I mean, you're wasting your time on Christians. You're brainwashed. It'd be the same thing as trying to unbrainwash Muslims or unbrainwash communists. You can't do it.
Well,
it takes experience to snap you out of your shit.
Yep.
And usually about the time you acquire whatever experience is required, it's too late.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you something else. I'm gonna prophesy the future for you. How do you like that? I'm gonna give you a hint about what's coming in the future.
Make your prediction.
You don't want to hear it?
Oh yeah, predict.
Oh, okay. If you're an anti-religion bug, this is going to make your blood boil. The level of technology that people consider to be state-of-the-art is about 20 years behind what's really going on. Okay. And the government is going to use super advanced technology to make religious miracles happen. It's going to make you sick to your stomach when you realize it's a sham and 99% of the population is buying into it.
Can you put a date? Can you put a date on when this will happen?
Any day now.
That's okay. That's kind of not specific.
Yeah, Jesus is coming any day now.
About the same time the dollar's worth a penny in China.
Are we talking like days, months, weeks, years, what?
Well, see, the future is like a plasma. It's sort of like quasi-matter.
Yeah.
And it only materializes under the right conditions. In other words, I believe
like
that
time advances?
Yeah. When enough time's gone by, it materializes.
When people wake up, then they change the future before it changes from a frog into physical matter.
Oh, so your prediction might be wrong because the future can change?
Yeah, study some quantum physics.
Okay.
It's my favorite subject.
I'm gonna let you go, Jeff, but I will address your points right after that. I want to open the phone lines to
I
other
want
people.
you to send an angry letter to the ACLU and tell them that 30 years later in them two programs I talked about.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Bye-bye.
I actually won't send a letter to the ACLU. Here's why. I have my own problems with chaplains in the Navy, and one of the reasons is I agree with you is this whole idea of saluting them. But the other thing is that I don't necessarily think that chaplains in the Navy are unconstitutional. We have an obligation to people in a volunteer military organization to provide them with the means to exercise their religious freedoms, which may be enough support for actually having a chaplain. What I would say is that this should not necessarily be a government-funded thing. All the government needs to do is allow ministers from different religions or advocates from secular societies to come in and make themselves available at no expense to the government, to the soldiers. And if churches aren't willing to donate to have a preacher come sit down and talk to a military member for free, screw them. They're tax-free. What more do they want? Your thing about the fire thing and which way the truck's going to go, you're right on there. I can't say for sure that they wouldn't go to the house. I'd like to think mostly they'd go to whichever one was closer that they thought they could actually save. But the big thing is the church didn't pay any taxes, and yet it's making use of public services like fire department, police department, all of these things. I've been an advocate of taxing churches for a long time. Tax everybody. And the only tax exemption should come when people demonstrate why there's a good reason that they should be tax exempt. The general consensus is
measurable charity, not
religions
pretend
do good
charity.
things.
Right.
Yeah, religions do good things. They're generally good. Well, yeah, that may be the case. You know why? I think is because people, for the most part, are generally good. You know, we get some people who want to do good things. The church has been good at organizing it. If your church is great, you know, God bless you. If your church is donating to the poor and feeding the homeless and clothing the homeless and doing whatever you can, cool. That's all you'd have to do. Demonstrate that the money that's coming in is actually going to good causes that serve the public good, and I'm fine with letting you be tax-free. I'd prefer that you set it up as a separate organization so that we didn't mix your proselytizing with your you know, benefits to the poor. But that's not what happens. Churches get rich. You don't need to look any further than the Mormons or the Catholics. The Mormons own everything. Marriott Hotels, I think. I mean, no, that's a correction. Somebody's already corrected me on that. It's owned by Mormons, not by the Mormon Church. But they got tons of money. They're handing out Books of Mormon for free. The Catholic Church, you ever been to Vatican City? Exactly how much gold does God need? If we took and sold off all the stuff there that's at the Vatican, how many people could we feed and clothe? If we emptied out their museums and dumped their coffers and sold it to collectors that wanted it, how many people could we house in Vatican City?
Or any number of televangelists and mega church ministers, right?
Yeah, you know, you've got these people driving multiple Rolls Royces. Oh, I only drive it on special occasions.
Benny Hinn, con artist.
You're taking dollars and pennies. And by the way, some of these guys, James Randi reported when they were investigating Peter Popoff and others, after the event was over, they looked through the trash, and any check that was under $20 was just thrown away. It wasn't worth their time to process checks that were under $20. As long as it came in cash, of course, we'll throw it in the counting machine. There's awesome videos of after these evangelical sermons of just the money counting rooms, and yet these are the same people who believe that Jesus went out and got so pissed off that he made his own weapon out of leather scraps and sharp, jagged bits, and went after the money changers in the temple.
Supposedly.
The hypocrites. Unbelievable hypocrites. You guys don't believe what you claim to believe. You believe in belief. You adopt whatever religious label makes you part of the acceptable portion of society. We show deference to religion without any question at all. Oh, religion must be a good thing. Yeah, it's in the Bible. Or we call the Bible the good book. It's not a good book.
It's a genocide manual.
Yeah, it's horrifying. Oh, well, you know, at least we can all just agree, you know, even if we don't agree on the nature of Jesus, we can agree that Jesus existed. No, we can't. Well, of course Jesus existed. I hear it all the time. There's tons of evidence that confirms it. A friend of the show who has his own show on here, Stan, calls in from time to time, and his only answer is that all history confirms this. Well, what history? Give me some examples. Give me some evidence. Oh, I can't do that. Why not? Why is it that for centuries people have been pointing out there's absolutely no good reason to believe that this story, there's no evidence to corroborate what you're saying, and yet the Christians haven't been able to say, look, here's the evidence, here it is. There's a difference between Jesus, maybe he existed, maybe he didn't, but there's a difference between Jesus and Caesar. Oh, we have more evidence that Jesus existed than we have for Caesar existed. No, we don't. There's not a single eyewitness testimony anywhere, including the Bible, to anything that Jesus did. Those books were written decades after the fact. We don't know who the authors are. They can't count as possible eyewitnesses. There's not a single contemporary account of anything that happened in Jesus' life. And on particular facts, not only do the Gospels disagree, who went to the tomb? What state was the tomb in? When did it happen? What's the process for salvation? Look those up and look it up in different Gospels and see if they agree. Not only do they disagree, but they disagree with recorded history. Matthew reports that when Herod found out that there was this new king to be born, he went nuts and started slaughtering everybody under 2 years old. Matthew's the only gospel that talks about that, the slaughter of the innocents. The other ones evidently weren't quite as creative as Matthew, because there's not a single historical record that confirms this anywhere. And Herod had enemies. Herod had enemies who reported on things that they didn't like about him, and yet they overlooked this. The common apologist argument is that, well, we're only talking about a handful of kids in Bethlehem. It probably just didn't make the news. That's nuts. He's slaughtering 2-year-olds wholesale, and because there weren't enough of them, we just didn't hear about it. Those accounts didn't survive. And if it was just a localized thing with just a handful of kids, why did they feel the need to drag Jesus all the way to Egypt for safety? Why not just move over to the neighboring town? Your stories don't make sense. Your books, you've got the Bible, which I enjoy. I've studied for years now. You have books where you have no original copies. You have no idea who the authors are. The church has put names on some of those books, the Gospel of Matthew.
Well,
the
the
Gospel
church has
of Mark.
actively lied in a number of cases, so that it just taints everything.
They'll freely admit that they just made up those names and put it on there. And they make outrageous claims about supernatural events. They're factually wrong on their history. They don't agree with each other. They're internally inconsistent. And they make claims about the supernatural. And yet people are expecting other people to believe based on this alone. That's insane. That is the very definition of delusion. Faith is not a good thing. People who are advocating, oh, you need to believe this, just take it on faith. No, faith is permission to believe something when you don't have a good reason. Why would anybody ever want to believe something without a good reason? That is the part that escapes me, and I've been there. I believed without a good reason, and I can't come up with any
excuse.
Maybe it was just comfortable. Maybe I just wanted to be like the other people in my family.
You were going with the flow. That was how you were raised.
Who knows? But it promotes a mindset where you cannot even think critically about these issues. When I was first wanting to perhaps talk to an atheist at the time, I was a Christian, and witness to them. I went to my uncle, who was one of the most knowledgeable Christians I knew, and asked him, what kind of things could I say to an atheist? How do I talk to them? How do I broach this subject? And he said, I kid you not, just ask them where morals come from. And I'm not going to lie, I went, well, duh. Of course. That's the best thing thank you. And the conversation really kind of ended there, because at that time, with the mindset that I had, as soon as he said it, I was already processing it through with the rose-colored glasses of Christianity or theology that said, well, yeah, you can't possibly.
That was a satisfying answer to you at the time.
It was perfect. It was a duh. It was nobody can come up with a response to this. I'm happy to say that people can come up with a response to it. As a matter of fact, the very question itself is absurd, and the burden of proof is still on those who are claiming that you have to have some kind of God for morals. And by the way, those of you who feel that God is the moral source of, or the divine source of morals, and that morals have an intrinsic value, you're the ones whose views are contradictory, self-contradictory. Those two things don't jive at all.
So my morals come from empathy and reason. That's where my morals come from.
Sounds good to me.
No magic there, no voodoo.
Yeah, there needs to be some source, some authoritative source for morals. I agree. I just don't see why it's not me. Mm-hmm. I'm the source of my morals. Don and I together are the source of our collective morals. We as a society are the source of society's morals. What reason do you have to think that there's some higher intelligence that's the source of divine morals? That's crazy. Crazy talk.
And how can you justify the alleged morals of this God?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you have to make some judgment about it. How do you tell the difference between the God and the devil? Which one's good and which one's evil? Well, you use your morals to make that determination. You look at the things that God does and you say, that's good. You're judging against your own moral values, and you've come to your moral conclusions in the same way that all of us have. We're out of time. Thanks to everybody who called in. Thanks to the crew. The list of names is up on the screen. I'm not going to have time to go through it. Yeah. Reminder, we'll be going to IHOP after the show, I-35 and Cesar Chavez. The following shows for the following weeks may be a little messed up due to holiday scheduling, but stay tuned. We'll get information.
Check our website.
And the war on Christmas starts next week. Tune in.